From the Lean Enterprise Institute in Boston, this is the WLEI podcast, where we share stories of people making the world better through lean thinking and practice. For more information about LEI, including how we can help you apply lean thinking, please visit lean.org.
Welcome to the WLEI podcast. I'm your host, Matt Savas, and today we're featuring a conversation that took place at LEI's Lean Summit this past March. We explored the origin story behind the term lean. How did it actually come about? LEI founder Jim Womack sat down with John Krafcik to share the history behind the term they coined while conducting the global benchmarking study of the automotive industry that resulted in the seminal book, The Machine That Changed the World, that also introduced us to the term lean. John Krafcik, following that research study, went on to do great things in the auto industry, including serving as chief executive of Hyundai America and CEO of Waymo, Google's autonomous car company. And towards the end of the conversation, John shares the latest about what's going on with autonomy and Waymo. With that, I'll turn things over to Jim and John. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did.
Well, hello. I think everybody knows by this point I founded LEI in 1997, which will be 27 years on May 1st, as I count. That was the first day I said, I am LEI, because that's all it was. And it took a little while I had to hire an employee to do the organization papers with the state of Massachusetts. So July or something is the sort of government official start date. But nevertheless, I have wanted for a long time to find some way to work in a little bit of talk about our origin story. And this is the perfect time because, as you heard from Josh this morning, that we're now kind of rethinking who we are. And we hope a lot of you are going to be engaged in this rethinking process, and there'll be more details tomorrow. But it's a different world. It's a new world from where we were. All kinds of things have changed. And you have to change when the world changes. So therefore, that's where we are. And who knows, the term lean, that four-letter word, maybe that's the wrong term. All the other kind of stuff that we have put out there in terminology, maybe that's wrong. But I thought to get the conversation started, we should go back to the origin, which is to say, where did this lean term come from? Who did this? Why? When? It wasn't me. Where did this term come from? And so I decided I would invite John Krafcik. John, are you here? Is he in the building? Oh, there he is. Look at that. There he is. Just found him outside and brought him on in.
Wow, I'm here.
Hello,
Nacho,
sir. Great to see you.
It's good to see you.
Okay. So John was the person who answered the little 3x5 card. Probably 9/10 of this audience cannot remember 3x5 cards that I stuck on the Sloan School of Management bulletin board in the spring of 1986 and said, I'm looking for a student who will run a global assembly plant survey.
I remember this moment.
Yes, and the student who showed up was this young guy. By the way, he was really young then.
Quite a bit older.
He's still carded in bars, unlike me. But nevertheless, he was really young then. This kind of guy walks in and says, oh, I'll do that. So off we went, and the idea was to look at every car and light truck assembly plant in the world, except the Russians and the Chinese, who we thought were not important at that point, and they weren't, and look at performance. And we thought there were going to be big differences in performance between the best and the worst, and then try to explain the reason for that difference in performance. So that was the assembly plant survey. And John went off to do it, and very quickly gathered an enormous amount of very interesting data, which then, through the magic of regression, always at MIT, you have to have a little regression, multiple regressions, better than simple regression, to see if we couldn't tease out the reasons. And the reason, are you prepared for this, was management. That the best players in the global survey, well, it was Toyota, actually. It was one best player, had a different system. management system, and lots of other components, but production system, product development system, supplier development system, and so forth. And the worst were old-fashioned modern management mass producers, right? So as time went on, it was time to start talking about this. We hadn't said anything to the world until 1988, and in my very hand, I have a prop. This is the Sloan Management Review at MIT. Now, that's quite ironic because Alfred Sloan is the guy who more than anyone invented modern management. So here in this, at this school, endowed by Sloan with the money he made off General Motors, we're now going to reveal that they're now the GOAT, and these other guys are the champs. I thought that was pretty funny then and now. Anyway, the article, the title, is Triumph of the Lean Production System. Isn't that great? Triumph of the Lean Production System. Oh, by the way, I didn't write this. John wrote this. I didn't have anything to do with it. I didn't know he was doing it. He walked in one day and plopped it on my desk and said, there it is. And there was one problem. And that was that instead of saying triumph of the lean production system, it said triumph of the blank production system. Because we had had a long argument about what to call this. And we didn't want to use Japanese terms. And we didn't want to use anything that sounded too fancy. It had to be simple, you know, no more than 4 letters. So therefore, what are we going to call it? All right? So sometime in 1988, we finally got together. So John, what happened? How did this happen?
You know, I was trying to remember the first time the phrase was used, and I went back in my archives, which were readily apparent to me because I've just moved from Austin, Texas to LA, back to California. And I had all my files together, and I was organizing them in some cogent fashion, and I found all this MIT IMVP stuff. And I found my Sloan School research dissertation, or my thesis, my master's thesis, which was called not Triumph of the Lean Production System, but rather Comparative Analysis of Performance Indicators at Global Automotive Assembly Plants. I don't know, that probably wasn't the best title. And so I remember as we were thinking about things to write and have published beyond that, and we knew we had the book coming, I recall going to your office, Jim, on the Sloan School MIT campus, building E40, room 219, and finding Jim there. He was busy working on something. And I showed him this thing that I had been working on, the short paper for Sloan Management Review. And I didn't have a working title. So we didn't even have Triumph of the Lean Production System. We just had this short version of my thesis. We had about 38 assembly plants in the study, and we had some really profound findings, and we were so excited to share them with the world. But all of the previous stuff that we'd written, stuff that I'd written on my own, stuff that Jim and I co-authored, it talked about fragile production systems, these with just-in-time inventories, like they could actually, break, versus the more robust, that was one of the terms we used for mass production, or buffered, because everything was buffered and buffered and buffered and buffered, and we thought those were somehow robust. But we didn't like these terms. They were terms of use and terms of art at MIT at the time from other researchers, but Jim and I shared a distaste for them. And honestly, my memory is completely foggy about where lean came from. I know when it came, but I can find nothing in the written archives that said, it was at this moment that lean got written down. All I know for sure is when I left your office that day in E4219, we had the title of that first published work, The Triumph of the Lean Production System. Yeah, that's my only memory. So although Jim has always been so kind to say, well, John, that was your thing, I always feel like, no, it was our thing. It came out of there together. It came out of E4219 together.
Come on.
I know I fought for lean, and I fought against the idea of fragile as the way to describe this, what ends up being an extraordinarily robust way to build things and develop things, right? I just thought it was too academic-y cute And I knew it wouldn't really have resonance with folks like yourselves who have to actually make these ideas work in practice.
Well, I was completely horrified with the fragile thing because I thought, I'm going to go around, I'm by nature sort of a missionary, and I'm going to go around and try to convince the world to embrace this system that we're describing. And
let's
just
build
imagine,
a fragile production system.
I go in to see the CEO, and I say, look, I'd like to sign you up for fragile production, which is the first step toward a fragile enterprise based on fragile thinking. What do you think? This was not going to work. Now, by the way, it was not just that it had been a fragile, robust kind of technical discussion, but the HR people were just dead set on fragile because they said it's people-centric. And if the management doesn't actually commit to the principles and doesn't renew that commitment, and the workforce doesn't sign up not just to do the work, but to improve their work, the whole thing collapses back into modern management mass production. So therefore, if you want to talk about people-centric, you want to talk about fragile. And I said, no, we're not going to do that.
No.
So at that point, I was the dictator, and those were the days, John. So now look, the memory I have, and John does not share this memory, and by the way, human memory is basically worthless. As I've gotten older, I realize, and I find documents, I tell stories, and then I go back and look at the documents, and it's all made up. So I think I just made this up, but I love it, so I'm going to tell you that we did actually have a meeting in E40, and we had all the team there, except Professor Farrow, who was upstairs, did not read the memo and did not show up. So there were other people there, and I wish some were present just to verify this. But I said, guys, we got to have something. And I'm going to stand here at the door, and we're going to decide this now. And so I said, why don't we name it for what it does? And so less human effort to make a given amount of value, less lead time, less inventory, less space, less warranty, less. And you said, lean.
How about lean?
I believe that is what happened. And if there are no other witnesses present, it will be concluded that this is what happened, which I think is a great story. I really like it, and therefore I will always choose to believe it. Yeah. Now, by the way, just for the benefit of the audience, I knew John was going to go do great things. He spent 4 years, actually, 2 years while you were at Sloan and 2 years just as a contractor to get the assembly plant study done. And the full version of it was in the machine book in 1990. And John went on to Ford, where you became even a chief engineer.
I'm responsible for expeditions and navigators. And for
wow.
that, I think I have some guilt.
It's a big burden, John. And then went to Hyundai USA, and you didn't say this, but I will say this, that he turned them into earnest commodities, Hyundais, into really exciting, attractive, beautiful, lovely cars over a period of, about 7, 8 years?
10 years.
10 years, okay. And then became the founding CEO of Waymo. I see you've got your Waymo shirt on there.
Jim says I wear Waymo on my sleeve, but I don't. As you can see, it's here, and also my socks.
In Waymo, the mandate there was to take a science project, which had been going on for quite a while and consuming a lot of funds, into a business. So he was the founding CEO of what became Waymo. And 5.5 years?
Yeah, 5.5 years there. And just a little commercial message for Waymo, because I think it fundamentally endorses this idea of lean. For those of you who study the auto industry and think about autonomy, L2, level 2 autonomous driving assistance systems, have the ultimate buffer, the ultimate repair area. It's the human driver behind the wheel. The human driver is always there to fix any mistake that the automated driving system applies to the driving experience. And so for those companies that believe there's a pathway from L2 to L4, we would sort of, I wouldn't say we would mock them at Waymo, but we would, because you can't do it that way. It's like saying that you can somehow fly if you just flap your wings long enough, eventually you're going to learn how to fly. And Waymo's approach was always, we need to be lean in our thinking about autonomous driving. We're going to do it without the ultimate buffer, without the ultimate inventory stock of human in the driver's seat. And we're going to learn to do it the lean way. And that was really one of the fundamental founding principles for this level of driving automation, which is now actually working in 4 US cities. I mean, L4, fully autonomous driving is here. Can I ask you guys, how many of you have tried Waymo in San Francisco or maybe LA? So we have some work to do in terms of penetration. I see 3.5 of you so far.
Yeah. Got a ways to go.
But they're about 600. Okay, so there's nothing but upside. I can see.
By the way, I just had my first ride in a Waymo that I didn't want to get out of, which was about 2 weeks ago. I used to get together with John periodically, and we would ride in the Waymo, which was not quite ready for prime time ever. We had many misadventures in Waymos. We didn't get hurt, but just, things were not, clearly not right. But now they're right. By the way, I was extremely impressed. So this is a win-win in the sense that I think Waymo's going to happen, and it's a good thing. And John, thanks so much for coming by.
Great to be here, and great to see a room full of lean enthusiasts.
Yeah.
That's great.
So John will be around for a few minutes, and have your picture taken. And things like, I don't know, do you charge for that? Or, anyway. Well,
not here.
I guess we forgot to talk about that. Anyway, so look, great fun. That's our one more thing. We're out of here.
I'd like to thank Jim and John for joining us at the Lean Summit this past March. And if you're interested in learning how things like autonomy are transforming the workplace, then check out LEI's upcoming event, the Future of People at Work Symposium, taking place July 18th to 19th in Detroit, Michigan. It's an opportunity to learn from and collaborate with peers and work alongside luminaries like Jim Womack, John Shook, Jeff Leiker, and others. You can learn more at lean.org. Thanks to you all for listening. Until next time.